Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we've got a 9-game baseball slate that starts at 1 o'clock Eastern. Do keep that in mind, it's an early slate today, so for the main slate. So let's get into this one. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also, drop a comment below with your home run calls, and if you get one right, I will call you out in the next video. Or shout you out in the next video. So I do have some stacks to talk about today. Milwaukee, Chicago Cubs, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, and Seattle. Those are my top 5 stacks, and there's lots of good options and how to do that. As for my core plays here on DraftKings, I have Albies, Soler from Miami, and Sawinski from Pittsburgh. Over on DraftKings, it was really hard to differentiate who I would want as a core play. So I ended up with 4 guys: Albies, Austin Riley, Soler, and Suzuki. All 4 of these guys are just too cheap for their potential today, and so that's why they're core plays. With that said, let's get into this particular slate. From a pitching perspective, we just have it is somewhat a top-heavy pitching slate, but the pricing is actually pretty decent today. We'll start with Justin Verlander here. Now, he's hard to dislike since he's in a really plus matchup here. He hasn't pitched yet this season, but in a minor league start, he got 69 pitches and had a really good six strikeout game. So I think he's got some really good upside in this matchup, especially against a weak opponent. He has great stuff when he has played, so I like his upside here. A little bit risky since it's the first game of the season for him, but he seems like a top-tier P1 play. But a good alternative to him is Pablo Lopez, who does face the Chicago White Sox. Now, the Chicago White Sox do have a couple guys that can hit some for some power, and they have some guys back, but he faced them a month ago and had 10 strikeouts. If he can get close to 7 or 8 strikeouts in this game, 1 or 2 earned runs won't hurt him too much, and he should be able to have a good fantasy output day. He's got really good stuff, and it's just a matter of, him being effective in the individual game. Then we'll look at Luis Goelito for Chicago White Sox. Now, he's facing the toughest opponent, and he does have a rough time with right-handed hitters at times. But he is pretty cheap, and he's a decent P2 option. His, decent upside is probably in the mid-20s, but I expect a 15 to 20 fantasy point game, which isn't terrible for a P2 option on the slate. He's also priced pretty fair, and that gives him some upside as he helps you pay up for some other bats. Buxton is who I worry about with Minnesota since the metrics for him are off the chart, but he definitely has some utility here. Then we'll look at George Kirby for Seattle against Oakland. This seems like a very high-risk, high-reward situation. Sorry, it's taking a minute to load. He's priced nicely here, but he doesn't have the K rate that any of the other pitchers I've mentioned have, and so that is where the risk draws. But he's a P2 option with some risk involved. Then we'll look at one other guy. I'm going to look at Grayson Rodriguez for Baltimore. Now, he's facing a Kansas City team that has tendency to have bad games. The question here is if he can keep going what he's been doing so far this season with the quality starts and not giving up any earned runs in the last 2 games. Granted, he hasn't faced a lot of good teams yet this season, but again, Kansas City isn't exactly a great team, so he definitely has some utility here. He's high risk, high reward, kind of a Hail Mary play as a P2 option. So moving on from those guys, we're going to get into our catchers, and we have a few different catchers to kind of look at today. We'll start with Adley Rutschman, who's in a really interesting spot. He's got some really nice upside. He's hitting the ball well. He does like to hit Kansas City, which is obviously a bonus as well. And he's been pretty solid throughout the season. He's got a good batting average, and he has home run potential in this game, which is what's really important at this position today. So he's a great option. Sean Murphy is also in play, who's just been absolutely mashing the ball. He's been getting good fantasy output every game to game, and Atlanta is kind of a sneaky stack today, and so he's definitely in play. And then we have some value, kind of Hail Mary approach options. We'll look at Trump for Atlanta. If he does draw a start, he's a very boom or bust candidate here. He's only played in a handful of games this season, and in the last 2 games he's played, he's had some fantasy points, and he's super cheap, and that definitely gives him some viability today. And then Amaya from Chicago Cubs is a Hail Mary play. If he draws a start today, which it looks like he could potentially do so, he has a really good upside when it comes to what he's done in Double A. He's been hurt, which has harmed his career as a young player, but he has good metrics in the minors, and he is going to get his first opportunity probably today to draw a start. And if that's the case, he will be somebody that's worth taking a look at. Moving on then to the first baseman, obviously Ohtani has big time upside. He is going to be hard to roster today at this price, and he obviously has to have a home run to pay off here. But he's got good metrics and good opportunity, and so I like his upside in this matchup. Pasquanto has been absolutely on fire lately, hitting the ball very well, getting hits. Had a home run yesterday. I called that one in yesterday's video. I don't know that he'll hit a home run today, but the metrics are nice today, and he has been mashing on Baltimore so far. And so I do like Baltimore's pitcher okay, but he is the one guy who I think is going to have some opportunity to have a big game. And again, Pete Alonso looks like a really great option today. I really like his upside, especially home run potential here. His price is a little bit nicer than Ohtani's, which gives him some utility. And then Trey Mancini, who is a value, almost Hail Mary play today. He started the season off kind of rough, but he's really starting to get some hits and put some decent games together. He's also near minimum priced, which definitely gives him some upside here and has some nice utility. Not only that, but if you want a Chicago Cubs stack, he's definitely a way to go about it. Moving on to that second baseman, we'll start with Ozzie Albies, who I just think is a great option today. Did anybody see this power coming from him? He is absolutely mashing the ball throughout the start of the season with 9 home runs already. Just great play by him, and he's got another great opportunity here with big-time metric upside. And he's priced really fair for this particular matchup. I expected to see his price at $5,000 today when I opened up the DraftKings app. So then we'll look at Brandon Lowe, who is $5,000. He's a good alternative with good upside. The price isn't quite as ideal, and he hasn't been hitting the ball as well, but he does have the upside, and he's a nice utility option here on the slate. Roman Urias, excuse me, Urias is also a kind of contrarian option today. Doesn't have the home run potential that Albies has, but he does hit the ball decently well, and if Baltimore has a big game, he definitely will be in play as a good option. Nolan Gorman is also in play for St. Louis. He's a contrarian play here. Priced very similarly and has just as much upside and has been hitting the ball just about as well as Albies has. And so he's definitely in play. A little bit more expensive, though. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm coughing. Austin Riley is also a very good play today for Atlanta, though his batting average isn't great. He has home run potential in this one, and he's had a few games in a row with some hits, and so I like his upside here, though he is fairly expensive. This position is somewhat weak, but we'll look at Patrick Wisdom, who has big-time upside. He has smashed the ball with 11 home runs already on the season, and he has good upside in this matchup. His price is better than Riley's, and his batting average is too. Escobar for the Mets is also in play today if he draws a start, which he doesn't play every day, but every now and then he does draw a start, and when he does, sometimes he's got some good potential. I like his upside in this matchup if he is in the lineup, so he's definitely in consideration. And then Gunnar Henderson, who can play third base or shortstop and is viable at both. He's a high-risk, high-reward play, but he's cheap and he's valuable as an option in either position. However, I don't think I want more than one of either him or Von Grisham, who is one of the decent plays at shortstop. Even though he hasn't hit a home run yet this season, he does have potential to get on base, and he actually does have some stolen base potential, even though he hasn't done that this season. He hasn't played a ton of games yet, but he looks like he will draw a start today, and if that's the case, then he'll definitely be in play. Adames from Milwaukee. Now, he is in a really interesting spot because he's just way overpriced, but he is viable as a home run hitter, though he's been in a slump, and that's the problem. Dansby Swanson is also in play here for the Cubs. I really like the Cubs today, and I like Swanson against Corbin, who he absolutely demolished last season in at least 2 games. He had over 15 fantasy points. I really like his upside here, and he's great matchup, and he's priced pretty fair. I mean, a little bit high, but fair enough to be viable. Excuse me. Excuse me again. Julio Rodriguez for Seattle looks like a great option on the slate. Despite the batting average, he's got good power, and he's got good upside in this matchup against a weak opponent. And I really do kind of like Seattle today, but they are somewhat hard to roster due to the fact that they're overpriced a little bit. but they are kind of a sneaky stack if you can afford to fit some of the guys in your lineup. Chris Bryant is also in play for Colorado. He's got some really interesting upside in this matchup. He's got boomer best mentality so far this season, but at home he's definitely good. Though I do think that Milwaukee's pitcher has some tendency to blank Colorado, so it's an interesting situation for that. But it's kind of a Hail Mary top tier option. Byron Buxton, I don't know if anybody's hitting the ball better than he has the last few games. Since he got out of his slump, he's hitting a home run in literally every other game. But this would be the game he doesn't hit one, and he is priced pretty expensive, and he's facing a pitcher that's decent, and so I don't think he's a great play, but I do think he's a top-tier option on the slate regardless. Acuna is also a great option today. He is absolutely mashing the ball. He's hitting an extremely good 355 batting average, and the home runs are starting to fall now, as he's had 3 in the last 7 games. He hit a monster 461 foot home run yesterday, and that was right through to center field, and I just look for him to have another good opportunity here. Atlanta looks poised to be a great team to stack today. Suzuki for Chicago Cubs, I really do like him today. He is a little overpriced here on DraftKings, underpriced on FanDuel, so he's going to be hard to roster here, but he's great option today for a Chicago Cubs stack. Sawinski, who I have as a core play, is a little bit risky today, but he's hitting the ball extremely well this season. He's got good power, and he did take a day off yesterday, so he's going to be back today. Looks like he should have some good upside in this matchup. I also like Jorge Soler for Miami. Now, his metrics just jump off the chart today. He is a boomer bust player a lot of times, but the metrics jump off the chart for him to hit a home run. He is a great option on the slate. His price is a little high, but he's still viable. Jesse Winker for Milwaukee. He has some really interesting upside today. He has been hitting the ball decently well when he does draw starts, which he hasn't been drawing all that often, but when he does have some utility here as a good option. So if he does draw a start, he'll be a person that I like. Again, he hadn't hit a home run yet this season, but he is due. Just a matter of time before he does. And then finally, Brendan Nemo. I really do like his upside today. He's pretty fairly priced. He's also got stolen base potential, and he's been hitting the ball decently well so far this season at 300 batting average, and he's got a great matchup here. So that's what I have for DraftKings. We'll move over to FanDuel now. And really, from a pitching perspective, there's 3 guys to choose from, and that's Verlander, who is a top-tier play, but super expensive, hasn't played yet this season, and a great matchup. Pablo Lopez, who's pitched quite a few good games this season, and he's had some really good strikeout potential, and he's got a nice matchup here against a weak opponent. And then Luis Giolito, who's kind of in a tougher situation, but he does have a decent strikeout stuff, and he's got some good upside. Not quite as much as the other two, but he's relatively cheaper. Now, I don't necessarily think you need to utilize a cheaper pitcher today simply because there's so much value available. But either one of those guys are viable in my opinion on this particular slate. Just to show you, you still have almost $3,000 per bat with Verlander and $3,100 with Lopez if you use my core plays that I have in my lineup currently, and that is, as you're going to see with the pricing of a lot of the players, that's not going to be a problem when it comes to trying to develop a good lineup. So we'll get into our catchers and first baseman here. We'll start with Adley Rutschman, who is priced pretty fairly at $3,300. He's definitely viable no matter what pitcher you utilize, and he's got good potential in this game as a guy that's hitting the ball well and has some nice upside. Vinny Pasquantino is also in play here, and he's hitting the ball really well lately. He's had 3 straight 12 fantasy point games or better, including a home run yesterday. I like his upside. He's hitting the ball extremely well. Had 7 hits in the last 3 games, and I think he's a great play at this price. Pete Alonso is a higher priced play. He's a little bit risky as a result, but he has some good potential here, home run hitting potential, and just overall big time upside. And then Trey Mancini is kind of a value Hail Mary play at this position. He is hitting the ball better from the start of the season. He is risky, but he's got a great opportunity to be a good part of a Chicago Cubs stack. Moving on to second base, Ozzie Albies, obviously a very great option today. Absolutely mashing the ball this season. Has a lot of big games, and he'll continue to hopefully have that today. Brandon Lowe is also in play here, though he's a little bit more expensive. He's high risk, high reward today, as his batting average is kind of sacrificed for his power hitting. But I do think he's got some upside in this matchup. And then Polanco is a good contrarian play off Albies, who's just hitting the ball extremely well and is continuing to have game to game, nearly having hits in every game except for one or two to start the season. Moving to third base, we'll look at Austin Riley, who's just way underpriced for this matchup. He is not hitting the ball quite as well as we'd like him to, but he has home run potential here, and this is just a great matchup for him. I like the upside, and he's a great utility option as well. Gunnar Henderson is also in play today, though he's very cheap. His batting average is also not good, but he does have some low-end potential and some potential for getting on base and doing some things there, and so it's just a matter of time before he hits a home run. Again, Wisdom is also in play for the Cubs, so he's expensive over here. He's much more rosterable on FanDuel or DraftKings than he is here on FanDuel, but he definitely has upside, and I can definitely see a home run coming from him today. Moving into shortstop, obviously Gunnar Henderson can play here as well. And then Von Grisham, who is just a very cheap option. He was hitting the ball decently well, and if he draws a start today, he'll be in play, but he's somewhat risky. But if he can get on base, then that would definitely give him some utility. Willie Adames is cheaper over here on FanDuel than DraftKings, and he's been in a bit of a slump for a while, but he does have home run potential in Colorado, and so that gives him some viability. But he's high risk, high reward. Dansby Swanson is very well priced over here. I really like the upside. I almost made him a core play, but there's just too many options at this position. He has some really nice upside and has some good potential here. Moving on to the outfielders, we'll start with Jorge Soler, who really does have some nice upside. I love the upside. I love the home run potential here. He has got, a boomer bust mentality to him, but if anybody hits a home run from Miami, it'll be him today. Chris Bryant is also in play today for Colorado. His price is cheap enough here that he's viable. He's really hard to roster on DraftKings due to his price, but he has some good upside, and he has hit a home run yesterday as well. Ohtani is also in play on FanDuel. He's got some nice upside here with the price being a lot more reasonable, and so he is definitely viable here. Byron Buxton is also in play, a little bit riskier, but he's hitting the ball extremely well. I don't know if anybody's hitting the ball better than him the last 7 or 8 games, just absolutely mashing with a bunch of home runs. I like the upside, and I like his potential. Then we'll look at Suzuki for Chicago Cubs, who's just way underpriced for his potential today. He's really hitting the ball well, getting a lot of hits. He's not as been getting any home runs really, but he's likely to be able to get on base and do some stuff, get some runs scored and stuff like that, and score some RBIs. Then we'll look at Jesse Winker, who's also in play today at $2,900. He hasn't hit a home run yet this season, but he's got the potential to do so, and he's got some nice upside here. Brandon Nimmo is also in play as a great option, as a guy who can get some stolen bases and hit a really good average. He's got some good potential here in this matchup. And then finally, last but not least, Tommy Pham for New Mets. If he draws a start, he will definitely have some utility. He's been kind of a boomer bust play, but he's got some really good price point and helps you pay up some other positions. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.